I wanted to love this book so bad, but I couldn't. I couldn't even force myself to love it. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know, my name is Faith and thank you so much for watching. It's officially June, so of course it is time to do my May reading wrap up. As always, this video will contain spoilers, so I'll put timestamps of when I talk about each book in the description below. This month I read or DNF'd 16 books. Since there are 16 books to talk about and I don't want this video to be insanely long, I probably won't go into as much detail about each book as I normally would. And because there are 16 books to talk about, we're just gonna get right into it. The first two books I'm gonna talk about together. First, I read Lovesick by Celeste Briars, and then I read Lovestruck by Celeste Briars. However, both of these were DNFs. I DNF'd Lovesick, I think, on chapter 2 or 3, and then I DNF'd Lovestruck in chapter 1. Normally, if I don't like or DNF book 1, I won't continue on to book 2. However, I really wanted to like these books, and I was more interested in book 2 than book 1, so I did choose to read that second book, but again, I did DNF it. I just wasn't a fan of the writing. In Lovesick, the second and third chapters are smut. I don't really like spice that early, however, it was a one-night stand trope, so I do get why it was that early. The characters just met at the end of chapter 1, however, in the smut scene, they were acting like they had been together for years and were already, like, deeply in love with each other. And in that smut scene, she referred to his penis as his humongous punisher, and then she also referred to sex as slamming the clam and licking the lily. I get some people think that's funny. I just find that to be a bit too cringy for my taste. And the licking the lily and slamming the clam were literally within one page of each other, and that was my breaking point for that book. And then in Lovestruck, we got these super random, super out of place metaphorical paragraphs. The books are in first person, so everything that we're reading is either the character's dialogue, thoughts, or like what they're seeing. And all that we knew about the character in Lovestruck at this point was that he was failing his classes. And there are people who are smart and just don't do good in a school setting. However, at this point in the book, we did not know enough about him to know if that was the case. All we knew was that he was failing pretty much every one of his classes, if I remember correctly. And he just hit this girl with his car, and he's getting out screaming at people to call 911. And then the next paragraph was saying things like, the ebony skies weeping, the nimbostratus rolls out like a funeral procession, things like that. And it was a long paragraph, and literally every single sentence had some really out of place metaphors from this guy who just hit a girl with his car and is failing all of his classes. Pretty much every single page had at least one paragraph like that, and again, so out of place, I couldn't do it and I ended up DNFing. So in this case, I just definitely think the writing style was not for me at all. But moving on from those books, we have The Son of Neptune. 5 stars. I loved this book so much. This was the one that I was most excited for in the Heroes of Olympus series. For some reason, I just have this super vivid memory of when this book came out and it just being all over the school's book fair that year. I've had this book cover stuck in my head for years. I was so excited to read it and it did not disappoint. First of all, I love that Percy was in this considering he wasn't in The Lost Hero. And I really liked getting to learn all about Camp Jupiter and the Roman gods versus the Greek gods. Also, I loved Hazel and Frank. Apparently, some people don't really like them. I loved both of them. I think they both have really intriguing backstories and I just like them as characters. And what do you mean? Percy forgot everything except for Annabeth. I'll never get over it. I'll never get over them. I love them so much. Also, the ending had me gagged. Every single book in the series except for one, and I'll get into that later, the ending, insane. Like in this one, what do you mean? Leo is Sammy. He wasn't, but we briefly thought he was. Or at least I briefly thought that he was. But again, 5 stars, highly recommend. And then I read Direbound, and I gave this one 2 stars. And that hurt because I wanted to love this book so bad, but I couldn't. I couldn't even force myself to love it. Heck, I couldn't even force myself to like it. There is so much that I could say about this book. The plot was insanely slow, mostly boring, and super repetitive. Like literally every single chapter felt like it was the exact same thing. This whole book just like blends together in my mind because it was just the same thing happening over and over and over again. Marin's skill level is just all over the place. The book literally starts with her winning a street fight against this guy, and basically the entire first chapter is telling us about how much training she has had and how she's such a good fighter. But then all of a sudden, oh no, she's not good, she sucks. And it just kept going back and forth of, oh no, she is really good. Oh wait, but no, she sucks. Oh, but no, she's really good now. oh wait, but no, she actually sucks. And at one point she's fighting Stark, who is like the alpha, and obviously she loses. But then in the very next chapter, no time skip by the way, they fight again and she wins. And it wasn't some, oh, he went easy on her and let her win. No, she actually won. Regardless of what her skill level was at no point in this book was her skill level high enough to be able to beat him, especially considering one chapter ago she lost and we were told that she needed so much more training to ever even come close to his level. And I don't know how to say her name, but Anassa, Marin's wolf, girl, don't piss me off. Why are you 200 plus years old giving this 20-year-old the silent treatment? Especially considering during the bonding, Marin was like, I don't want to be bonded, I don't want to be bonded, I don't want to be bonded. You bond her anyways, and then apparently you're mad and whiny that she doesn't trust you? Why would she? You've given her no reason to. Especially considering the fact that the entire time you've been bonded, you've been throwing a temper tantrum like a 2-year-old. It just made me so mad. And Marin becoming alpha? No. I did not like that. And at one point in this book, Marin says, and I quote, I'm cooked. You're what? I hate seeing modern slang, especially TikTok slang, in fantasy books. Obviously, that's personal preference. Some people don't mind it, but this is my review. I don't like it. Also, I see so many people say that this is Fourth Wing but wolves. Like, I have seen people literally say that this is the exact plot of Fourth Wing. The only difference is the wolves. I'm here to tell y'all right now, that is a lie. The literal only similarity is the bonding thing, which to me isn't enough to justify saying it's exactly like Fourth Wing. So if you want to read this book because you think it's going to be Fourth Wing 2.0, do not do that. And there is so much more that I could say about this book, but we have so many books to talk about. I'm gonna move on. Again, I gave this book 2 stars. I'm definitely not continuing the series and I would not recommend it. And then I read the Demigod Diaries. I didn't really care much for any of the stories other than the Percy and Annabeth one. I don't really care for Luke. At this point, I didn't really care for Jason, Leo, and Piper enough to read a short story about them. That being said, the last short story in this book, called The Son of Magic, was actually written by Rick's son. I don't know if it was supposed to be this way, but it actually really creeped me out. I definitely feel like his son could have a good career as a horror or thriller writer. But even though he was a good writer and it did creep me out, I wasn't super interested in the story. But overall, again, the collection was fine, so I did give it 3 stars. I probably would only recommend this if you're super into Percy Jackson. If you're just a casual fan, I probably wouldn't read it. And then of course, this month I had to do my reread of The Deal. To no surprise, 5 stars. I read this 4 or 5 years ago, loved it then, loved it now. Garrett Graham is still tied as my #1 book boyfriend with Maverick Miller from Face Off in the DC Star series. I finished it just in time for the show, and if you watched the show, you should go check out my book versus show comparison video. I've said this 1,000 times and I'm gonna say it again. This is one of my favorite romance books ever. I love Hannah and Garrett's relationship so much. And again, 5 stars, highly recommend. Next, I read The Mark of Athena and I gave it 4.5 stars. 4.5 stars might be controversial because I do think it's a lot of people's favorite, but 4.5 stars is still really good. I still loved it. It just was not my favorite. Between Percy Jackson and The Heroes of Olympus, this is definitely the book with the most Percabeth content up to this point. And I mean them being a couple, not just friends. And I absolutely love that about this book, and I loved their reunion considering they were split for both The Lost Hero and Son of Neptune. I also love Annabeth, and yes, she was in Lost Hero, but barely. And the Percy Jackson series is from Percy's point of view, so I did really like getting a ton of the story from Annabeth's point of view. And obviously, can't talk about this book without talking about the ending. What do you mean? He fell into Tartarus for her. Incredible, 10 out of 10. That scene deserves a Nobel Peace Prize, an Oscar, a Michelin star, any award that has ever existed should go to that scene. Phenomenal. Loved it. Love them. No notes. But overall, I don't know, I kind of just felt like something was missing, which is why I gave it 4.5 stars and not 5. I'm sorry, please don't come for me. But again, 4.5 stars, I still loved it and I would still highly recommend it. And then I read the arc of The Song of Salt and Shadow by Seren Rose. I gave this book 5 stars, and while I was lucky enough to be able to read the arc, it is now available for everybody. I seriously love this book so much, I never wanted to put it down. The plot was pretty action-packed and honestly, it was just fun. I've said this before, but for me, pacing is something that can easily make or break a book, and for this one, the pacing was pretty much perfect. The overall plot starts right away. There's an action scene right at the beginning, and it pretty much never lets up throughout the rest of the book. Sable is a cursed pirate captain, and Eris is a siren without a tail. They're supposed to hate each other, but they just can't. I just love their relationship so much. Sable was so sweet to her. In the author's note, she did tease that we might get more books set in this world, and personally, I would love one about Grimm. I loved him so much in this book, and I'm sure the more we get to learn about him, I will love him even more. Again, I gave this book 5 stars, and I highly recommend, and it is available now. And then I read The House of Hades, and guys, it was a 5-star. Hands down, my favorite book in the entire series. And I know that it happened in Mark of Athena, but again, he fell into Tartarus for her, and we got to see it all play out in this book. And this one had even more Percebeth content than Mark of Athena did, and I ate it up. I just love them so much. They are so precious. The plot of this one was easily my favorite, especially with all the scenes of Percy and Annabeth in Tartarus trying to find their way out. This is another one that I see a lot of people put as their favorite, like me. Obviously, I understand why they do it, because it was incredible. So yeah, to no surprise, 5-star read. Again, highly recommend. The next book I read was Collide, and I gave it 3 stars. I can't lie, I was kind of disappointed with this book. I liked the characters, but they definitely fell a little flat, especially Aiden. I feel like compared to Summer, we didn't really get to dig deeper into his character as much. Also, I loved Kian, and I felt like everybody was so mean to him. Like, they had a whole separate group chat without him in it, and it never really got addressed either. Like, it happened, and then we just don't really hear about it again, even though he was very clearly really upset about it. And I loved him so much. And honestly, of all the guys, he's probably my favorite. And then they just did that to him. I felt so bad. It's also a very fast-paced book. Feelings started to grow around the 25% mark, and for my taste, that is just way too early, especially considering they started as enemies, and then again, by 25% in, they already started liking each other. So I kind of just wish either their enemy stage or friend stage was dragged out longer. I'm still debating on whether I want to continue the series. I have heard really good things about other books in the series, especially Revolve, but I'm still undecided. Overall, it wasn't terrible, but I didn't like it as much as I hoped I would. Again, 3 stars. I would maybe recommend it. Next, we have The Blood of Olympus, and I gave this one 4.5 stars. I really liked this book. However, I hated the ending. This was the 5th and final book in a series where every single book was over 500 pages, and it ended like that. It was very open-ended, specifically with Leo's storyline, and in such a long series, I really feel like it needs to have a much more definitive ending. I just feel like it wasn't wrapped up properly. This one seriously had so much potential, but I just cannot get behind that ending. I finished it and literally started Googling if there was a 6th book, and I just didn't realize it, because there's no way it ended like that. Again, I gave it 4.5 stars, and honestly, I do feel like that's kind of generous considering my feelings towards the ending, but excluding the ending, I did really like this book. So while I still love the series and definitely recommend it as a whole, just be prepared for an open ending. Next, we have The Summer That Made Us by Robyn Carr, and I DNF'd it. I got this in a romance mystery box at Books A Million. This is not a romance book. This is a fiction book with an incredibly minor subplot of romance. I've read the first 3 chapters, that was like the first 60 pages, and I just couldn't do it. Going in, I knew it was out of the realm of what I normally read. However, I have a rule where if I paid for it, I have to at least give it a try. And even though it was from a mystery box where I definitely would not have picked this book out, I gave it a try. So I'm proud of myself for at least giving it a try, but again, just was not for me. Next, I read Demigods and Magicians. Compared to the Demigod Diaries, this was definitely a more cohesive collection of stories. I feel like they all actually went together, and I also just liked each story better than the ones in Demigod Diaries. You're supposed to read the Cain Chronicles before reading this. However, I have to say, I have never read them. That being said, it wasn't hard to understand at all. The characters and their backstories are explained enough to where it's super easy to follow along. And I will say, after reading this, I'm a lot more intrigued about the Cain Chronicles than I was. However, honestly, I don't ever see myself reading them, and that is why I decided to just go ahead and read this without having read the Cain Chronicles. Also, because I'm trying to get books off of my physical TBR, and I own this book and I don't own any of the Cain Chronicles books. But again, even without reading them, I still enjoyed this book. I gave it 3.5 stars, and I probably would recommend this one. And then we have The Arc of Daybreak. I was so excited for this one and it did not disappoint at all. I gave it 5 stars. Because it's an arc and the book doesn't come out until July, I'm not going to say too much about this book, but I will say, just like with Nightshade, I did not want to put this down. Alex and Ophelia are one of my favorite book couples ever, and I just loved getting to read the rest of their story. The plot was really engaging, the characters were multi-layered, the pacing was so good. Overall, I loved it. That being said, I am really sad that it's over. I'm definitely hoping we get at least one spin-off duet specifically about Vincenzo, and I feel like I can't say anything else without spoiling it, so I'm gonna leave it at that. Again, 5 stars, highly recommend. It will be available on July 28th. And I am so late to reading this, but I finally read The Spanish Love Deception, and I gave this one 4.5 stars. Aaron Blackford is the ideal man. I loved the way he treated Catalina, and their relationship, absolutely adorable. Part of the reason it took me so long to get to this one is because I read The American Roommate Experiment a couple years ago and I didn't realize that it was the second book in the series. And while I liked it, I didn't love it, so I wasn't super in a rush to get to this book. This book was a bit slow for the first 30%, but after that it did really pick up and I started to absolutely love it. So again, 4.5 stars, I definitely recommend this one. And the final book I read this month was King of Gluttony by Anna Huang. I gave this one 4 stars. I loved the characters so much. Maya and Sebastian, amazing. I loved their relationship and I love them both as individuals. However, while I loved them, the plot was boring. It was a very slow start and honestly there were slow moments throughout the entire book. The plot that existed outside of Sebastian and Maya's relationship really just wasn't intriguing to me. I feel like there was a lot that was put into the last 20% of this book that could have been spread out throughout the book and I probably would have enjoyed the plot a lot more. And because it felt like not much happened at the beginning and a ton happened at the end, the pacing also was pretty uneven. Overall, I did still like the book and I love the series and Anna Huang, so I'm definitely continuing the series. But Killian and Tate's relationship was teased at the very end of this book and guys, I am so excited for it. Again, I gave King of Gluttony 4 stars, and while it wasn't my favorite in the series, I would still recommend it. And those are the 16 books that I read or DNF'd in May. 12 of those books were off my physical TBR, so you're probably like, Faith, oh my gosh, your physical TBR must be so low now. Wrong. It was my birthday this month, and I went a little crazy and got 10 books. So my physical TBR is currently at 48. That being said, I am going on a not super strict bookbind ban through the end of June or until my physical TBR gets below 40. And it is currently at 48. So not super long to go really. And that was a lot. So I don't really have anything else to say. So with that, I think that is all that I have for you guys today. Be sure to like and subscribe and follow my Instagram and my TikTok, which are in the description below for more bookish content. I hope you guys read some great books this month. Love you guys. Bye!